Thank you for being here. We have Kerrie today. And Kerrie, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. But first, I just have to say, Kerrie and I used to work together. It's been like a couple years, and we became friends. And so I had to have her on this podcast because I think she's so wonderful. But I want you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. And yes, I think it has been 2 years since we worked together, which is kind of crazy. My name is Kerrie Fitzgerald, and thank you so much for having me on. And I am a product business e-commerce coach, mentor, educator, wearer of many, many hats. I do a lot of different things. And so I've had both a physical product-based business, and now I do coaching and help people both grow their product-based business or start a product-based business. And I am obsessed with coffee, dogs, hot sauce, and rainy weather. And I live in Seattle.
Well, we are obsessed with a lot of the same things, minus the rain. I am not a fan of the rain like you are. When we had like the worst rainy season this winter here in Southern California, so not a fan
I
of the
heard
rain.
about that. People were
Yeah,
like freaking out, like, oh my God, it's raining for 2 days in a row. The world's ending.
it was much worse than that. It was terrible, and I was one of those people complaining. So, but yes, Kerrie and I can go back and forth about dogs, any bears, any
Mountain
type of
lions.
mountain lions. We're always
Mountain
sending each
lions
other
is our favorite animal of choice too.
the one. I think it's because it's the one we're most terrified of running into in our neighborhood. So,
Terrifying.
so I'd love to have you share a little bit about your first business with us because I think it's such an amazing story and it was a product based business. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, it's about 7 years ago, actually, right around now, I founded a company called the Dapper Dog Box, and it was a high-end subscription box / e-commerce store for pet people. So I used to give people these like really cool monthly boxes of like dog treats, and everything was super high quality and organic and really fun and pretty. Dog treats, dog toys. We manufactured really trendy, beautiful bandanas. So every month we would send those off to dogs. And then I also had a shop where I would just sell bandanas and just different pet products. And I did that for almost 3 years. I grew the business, got a lot of media features, just did a lot of fun things with it, donated to rescue organizations every month, which was one of my favorite things. And then I sold the business in 2019. I exited, got some money, and left the business. And that's just a little snapshot of 3 years in my life. But yeah, one of the best things that I really ever did. And I think more importantly, it led me to where I am today, which is what I really like doing, helping other people start a dream business or grow a dream business. So just a little bit about my journey.
I love that. And because before you had your subscription business, you were working like in a corporate job and traveling quite a bit. What
Yep.
made you want to kind of switch over and do your own thing?
So a few things really. I think the biggest thing was I became a mom. And I couldn't really do that job anymore. I was basically in international education. I worked for an Australian company, and I essentially got paid to travel the world and stay in cool hotels and essentially recruit international students to come and study in the US at a school in Boston where I lived. And, I left that job and I was like, all right, I just wanted to I was like, I'll take like 6 months off and then I'll just find another marketing job. So it wasn't like I didn't want to work anymore. I just wanted to take a little bit of a breather. We also moved from Boston to Southern California. Basically, we were neighbors. Unfortunately, I wish I knew you then. We would have had so much fun.
Same.
Um, but we moved there. And so I was like, all right, I'll start looking for jobs we were living in Irvine in California, and nothing was sticking. And I was just like, ugh, I don't know. I was just feeling like nothing is quite working. And then, and I say that we were there for like a month. I really didn't give it much time. And literally I was at the gym. It was April of 7 years ago, maybe March, whenever Easter is, March or April. I was at the gym and an idea popped into my head. Like, you should start your own business. You should start an online store. You see all these subscription boxes all over the place. So many of them are really crappy. Some of them are really fun, but you should start one. And I was just like, that's a really interesting idea. I had never thought of it before. Never, I was never like, oh, I want to start my own business. The idea like bolted into my head, literally, when I was at the gym one day. A week later, I was thinking about like what kind of business it would be. And I went from like, okay, I have a new baby. He's 6 months old. Have a new baby. I'll do a baby box. And I was like, nope, not feeling it. I just didn't like the idea. And I was like, I love dogs. I love animals. I used to get a subscription box for my dog when she was a puppy and I hated it. So I could make a better one than them. And that was kind of it. And now it's been 7 years, which is crazy. 2 months later or 3 months later, I launched the business, the Dapper Dog Box. And, yeah. So I was never like someone who wanted to do their own business. I was in this transitional period of life, again, new mom, like living across the country from friends and family. And it popped into my head and I sort of instantly knew that this was the right thing for me. I don't know. I always think it was like my gift from the universe if I'm sounding a bit wooey, but there's really no other explanation. I don't know. So
Well, we like woo woo here. So it's
yeah.
funny. That's really similar to me too, because before kids, I had a job where with intense travel as
Mhm.
well. And I was traveling all over and it's like that wasn't in the cards for me after have becoming a mom. Like there was just
Yeah.
no way I was going to be doing that. It was already hard
Yeah.
enough when I was just single without kids. So there was like, I
Exactly.
knew I wanted to do, and I think that's what's so great with having your own business and starting something from scratch I mean,
Yeah.
not that it's easy, but you kind of call the shots more. And so with that, being a new mom, you can kind of be in charge of your schedule and making sure that
Mhm.
you get to make the choices for you and your business. And I think one thing that you
Exactly.
do so well, and because I see everybody needs to go follow Kerrie on Instagram, but I see you all the time taking your walks and like doing self-care and taking care of yourself. And I wanted to ask you more about that because I think it's and I know this from personal experience, it's really easy to be so busy that it just kind of gets pushed down to the end of your list of, I'm
Yeah.
trying to do my daily walks too. I even did an episode about walking because it is so beneficial.
Mhm.
And it's easy for me to say, you know what? I have to pick my kids up at 2:30. I just don't have time for that walk. I'm just going to push through. And then before you know it, your habit of doing that time of self-care is like out the window. So how do
Mhm.
you commit to that to yourself and like make sure that you're taking care of yourself because you are so busy as a business owner?
So I think the game changer for me, there's two main game changers, I would say. The first one was I stopped viewing my walk. So I do it daily just for context. I have two dogs and I walk them almost every single day. Like if I don't, there's a good reason for why it's not happening. But for the most part, it happens every day. And it's usually like 45 minutes to an hour plus. And sometimes I do two walks if I'm good. I want to start getting to two walks mandatory. Um, I started viewing my walk not as a chore, but as part of my schedule. Like just like you wake up and you brush your teeth. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you have coffee. Jess, you might drink some strange algae drink. But for most of us, we drink, I love you. I'm
She
just
makes
teasing.
fun of my drinks. Yes.
I'm teasing. We have like certain habits that we do that they're part of your day. Like you're probably not going to wake up, like you're probably not going to leave your house if you don't brush your teeth. Maybe you do, but like for the most part, you do not. You also get dressed, you put on your shoes. So when you start viewing those things as part of your schedule, your routine, your habits, it becomes easier to do because you're not going to push it to the side. Obviously, there's always exceptions to the rules. Sometimes we literally can't get out and do a walk. There's like stuff that happens. But I think for me, the mindset shift of this isn't a chore, like, oh, I have to go take the dogs out. This is part of my workday. So in my phone, so this is the second game changer. The first game changer, just as a recap, is changing your mindset of this walk is not a chore or a hassle. It's like part of my day. It's part of just like brushing my teeth, having my coffee, whatever else you do. The second thing is putting it into my phone. So on my iPhone in my calendar, I put everything. If I have a podcast recording, if I have a project due, it goes in my phone, all my kids sports things. But at 7 a.m., it doesn't mean I'm actually going to do the walk at 7 a.m. I have a reminder that says dog walk, and it's in my phone. And in fact, I have 2 reminders in my phone that I need to do a dog walk at 7 o'clock and 2 o'clock. It doesn't mean I'm going to do them at that exact time. But when I open up my phone every single day and I see in my calendar dog walk every single day, it reminds me, oh yeah, I have to do my dog walk. Now I don't need reminders because I've been doing this now for, it's been a couple of years now, really. And I'm better now about making the dog walks longer. But I would say those 2 things are what really helped me to think, I'm going to say 3 things too. The third is for me personally, I'm a multitasker. I know multitasking isn't actually good for you to do, but when I'm out walking, I realize quite quickly that I'm getting a lot of good business ideas while I'm out walking. It's not just that I'm listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook or something, or just having nothing. I actually get a lot of ideas for my business, content ideas, podcast episodes, blog posts, I do a lot of social media stuff actually when I'm dog walking. So I also started to think of my dog walking as like part of my job. So it's not like, I remember one day my husband was like, what do you like? It was like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning. And I had just dropped my son off at school and I came home. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go for a walk. He's like, don't you have work to do? And I was like, yeah, my dog walk is like, that is part of my work. I actually do work when I'm walking. And that kind of this must have been like a year ago. And that kind of always stuck in my head because I think we're so programmed to associate working with, you go and sit at a desk at your 9 to 5, or if you work from home or whatever, like you're sitting at a desk, you have your computer open, that's your work time. And if it's not in that context, it's not working. But I can literally do a dog walk, check in with my clients, think of blog post ideas, create a couple, like 3 Instagram reels or TikTok videos, and still enjoy my walk and be outside and get my steps in and feel good, look at the trees, all that kind of stuff. So I think those are like the 3 things that really help me to prioritize my walks every day. And I can say literally without a shadow of a doubt that like my dog walking every single day has been the biggest contributor to my business growth. Not me working a million more hours a day, not me investing in like a million masterminds, which I do as well. I do invest in programs all the time. It's my dog walking because 1, it makes me feel better mentally. When I'm on my walks, I feel better after. I'm in a happier mood. But 2, I get really good business ideas when I'm out walking. So it's kind of, I'm like killing 2 birds with 1 stone when I'm out doing my walks every day. And so when I started like changing the mindset that this isn't a chore, it's not a hassle, it's something that makes me feel better. And it makes me like, I think of my walks as like therapy, honestly. So yeah, that's just, I feel like I gave a lot of detail on dog walking, but I think for a lot of people, you don't associate going out and walking, whether it's with a dog or not. Even if you don't have a dog, walk by yourself, listen to music. I think a lot of us don't associate walking with all those really good things that come with it. We think of it as like a hassle or a chore, or like, oh, I have to go to the gym. You could also just go out walking for 40 minutes and, that's great too. So yeah.
There's so many things that you said. I kind of think of, it reminded me of like sometimes when I take a shower, I like have all these ideas. It's like when you're out in nature and you are all of a sudden the noise is gone. It's like such a great time to sit back and like just be inspired. First of all, just that alone. And then it is fun. Like I see your walks on Instagram. Like I know you're doing posts when you're doing your walks because, and it's such a pretty background too. I'm like that it is like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but it's also more than that because you're also getting the benefit of walking for your physical health and being in nature, which your walks are so pretty where you live is so there's so much nature where you live. So it's like that alone, those couple of things alone are so good for your health and your brain. So it's like that makes it and, and seeing results too, like I feel so good after this. Why not
Yeah.
take the time to do it? And that's kind of, I think that goes back to the mindset of like, this isn't a chore. This is
Yeah.
just my routine. And also pairing this feeling with this action is just going to help it stick so much better, I feel like. Do you do any other things for yourself to care, like any other self-care things? I did see that you went and took an ice bath
Oh
or an
my gosh.
ice plunge. Tell me about that.
Um, I don't do a lot more things. I mean, I do like, I'm not sure. I think skincare is self-care. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I'm obsessed with your products and I do a lot of skincare things. I take a lot of baths. That for me is my other like happy place of like, I actually do work in the bath too. I have some unconventional places that I work. um, but when I lived, so I live outside of Seattle now, but when I lived in Seattle, I started going to an infrared sauna. I think we've talked about this before. There's a place in Seattle called City Sweats and it's amazing. And you go there and you sit in this infrared sauna and it's just, you sweat and it's so good for you. Um, and I did that regularly and then I kind of took a break for a couple years and then I started going back recently again and I bought like a pack of passes. So now I'm going to start going once a month as part of like a self-care day I'm going to start doing in my business, which I like. So yeah, so the last time I went, I saw they had a plunge pool and I'm like, I'm going to try the freaking plunge pool. And I did. And I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's one of those things where maybe it takes a couple times to feel some results from it. I don't know. I definitely did not feel like the rest of the day. I honestly felt exhausted. So I did not feel, probably because I was relaxed. Let's be honest. I think it was because I was actually very relaxed. But it was good for the mental challenge. I wanted to sit in that icy 30-degree water for 1 minute. So I went in the first time and I think I went in for like 3 seconds and was like, this is terrible. And then I went in again for a couple more seconds. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do 1 minute inside this damn thing. And so I put the phone next to the little pool thingy and I went in and I was in there for like a minute and maybe a couple seconds. And then I did it again the second time and it was like maybe a minute and 20 seconds or something. So I think it's like the mental challenge part of it that I really like. I love trying to push myself to just do a little bit more. Like, can I reach this goal even if it feels really friggin' hard? So I think for me, that was actually the best part, but the actual sitting in 30-degree water was not like, I did not like it. Nope, I did not like it at all. I will do it again.
I actually just had this woman, Dara, who has her own detox cottage in San Diego.
Oh my
And the
God,
first
detox
thing that
cottage. That is so cool.
it's amazing. And the first thing that you do is you go into an ice bath. And on the podcast, she was talking about all of the benefits to the ice bath, but her favorite benefit is the mental benefits that you get and the amount of just confidence that she sees her clients have because they've done something that's so hard and
Yeah.
it's so uncomfortable. I don't think anyone likes sitting in it, but just the fact that you could do something that hard and complete what your goal was with it is that she'll see the biggest difference with that. It's not just the fact that it helps your lymph system and immunity and inflammation and all of the other amazing benefits, but that mental piece, she said her favorite piece of why those are so great. It is tough. It is tough to do, but that part is the most amazing. And you talked about goals and you're so good at pushing yourself and always coming up with new ways to challenge yourself. And I remember you posting something, it's maybe a little while ago, but you were talking about like micro goals and how that can help doing these little things. Can you talk more about that and like what you were talking about in that post? Because I think that's such a great, we were talking about mindset earlier. I think that's such a great point because I think a lot of people go so big. I've done the same thing where I'm going to go from like the growth of my business from this to like something crazy and then those big, huge goals can feel so overwhelming. And then if you don't hit them, you're you just feel defeated and you kind of want to give up. I feel like.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I don't exactly remember the post. I don't remember the exact post that it was, but I can definitely just in general talk about it. Yeah, I think with goals, I think a lot of, I think a lot of these like online business people are always like, get like, okay, I'll give you an example. So I have a podcast, and my first goal of the first year of my podcast, I launched it November of, was it 2020? We just hit 2 years. So I don't know, whatever. So it's been 2.5 years now. My goal for year number one was to get 100,000 downloads. And for me, going from 0 to 100,000 downloads felt like a really big, scary number for me. And the first year went by and I was nowhere near 100,000 downloads. But was I all down on myself for it? Absolutely not. I was like, I don't care. Like, the fact that I was consistent and put out at least one episode per week for an entire year, I'm really proud about that. And I know the numbers will come. Then year two passed and I still didn't hit 100,000. And now 2.5 years later, I am at 98,800 and something downloads. So I'm almost at my little goal of 100,000 podcast downloads, which to someone else, they might be like, oh, well, I've had 4 million downloads over the last 2 years. Like, your podcast sucks. And I do, in the back of my head, I am actually thinking that, but I have to like push that negative, self-harming person away, because it's really important, I think, that we not compare to other people. We set our own goals. And I think you can set reasonable goals that are achievable without like going crazy. Like, oh, I have to hit, like, it's not probably feasible to say, I want to have 2 million podcast downloads in my first year of having a podcast. If you have a small audience, if like this is your first podcast, your audience is small, that's not feasible. So if you don't hit that 2 million download thing, and then you're going to be like, oh, I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I'm going to quit my podcast because I didn't hit this 2 million mark. Like, that's the problem that I see people doing, is like they have goals that are what's the word? Like, not unachievable, but just like unrealistic for where they're at right now. And if they don't hit them, they then go into all like, I'm a loser, my podcast sucks, or my diet sucks. I'm going to quit it. And then they actually quit just because their goal was too high, So I really like the idea of doing with anything, just small baby steps, especially if you're newer at something. If you're like, I'm going to lose 50 pounds in a month. Well, that's not realistic. And two, why don't you aim for maybe 5 pounds the first month, and then you start to see progress, you take baby steps, and then the next month, maybe you lose another 3 pounds. Like, I think baby steps and micro goals are kind of the same thing. Like, we want to take small steps towards these bigger goals, but then also, like, if you do have a really big goal, like, say, again, I keep using podcast growth, but maybe, I don't know if there's like a different example you want me to talk about, but I don't know. We'll keep the podcast thing. Like, you have a goal of 100,000 podcast downloads. Well, you want to have a goal and then you want to work backwards. What are the small things that you need to do to hit that goal? So maybe one is making sure your podcast, you record on video, and then you can take the video and you can repurpose that into little video clips that you put on different platforms, on YouTube, on, Instagram, on TikTok or something. And then maybe one of your other small goals is, to get visibility for my podcast. I want to get on other people's podcasts. So I'm going to make a goal that I want to get on at least one other podcast every single month, like something that feels achievable. And then once you do, it'll be easier for you to bump that from 1 to 3 podcasts per month or something. So I don't know if that's kind of the post I was talking about, but that's kind of what it is. It's just like baby steps towards a big goal, but things that are attainable for you, not jumping from like 0 to 1 million, 2 million podcast downloads for your first year, but set a goal that's a little bit more attainable, and then kind of work backwards. Like, what do I have to do to hit that huge goal?
Yeah, this reminds me of when people make their New Year's resolutions too, because it's like by the end of this year, I will do all of these things. And I could see how it's why people give up, because maybe they went too big and
Mhm.
they weren't being kind to themselves with those goals because it was too much.
Yeah.
And also I feel this is the same thing with your like the podcast example of like of health and wellness and of healing or especially I've been going through a lot of stuff with my health and there are times where I'm like I want to have these goals met by 3 months or whatever and I'm like well there's no time frame I can really predict with the way I'm healing and the way I'm going through things. It's like I just have to keep doing it and I have to keep seeing results even though it's slow because sometimes we get impatient and we don't want to wait.
Yeah.
It's like I want results now and it gets frustrating otherwise, but also having the goals where you can be like okay, like with a weight loss goal instead of just the number, it's like, oh, well, how do I feel? Am I feeling better? Do I have more energy? Other markers of your goal and not just the end goal, which is, and I think weight loss is such a good example because a lot of times it's not even about the weight, it's, you could lose very little weight, but your body can change and you could lose
Mhm.
fat and you can be more
Yeah.
muscular or whatever. So, and then the podcast thing is interesting too, because after having my podcast, like you do want goals, but I'm also to the
Mhm.
point where like I'm getting people who contact me and say, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe how that person that you had on was so amazing. Like they have helped me so much." So
Mhm.
in my eyes, I'm like that's more so much more impactful to me and like what my goal is right now as a new podcaster than like big
Mhm.
numbers and
Yeah.
hitting people who are impacted in a positive way. Like that's my goal.
Mhm.
And also like
Mhm.
myself, I've learned so much from these guests that I'm having on that I'm like, okay, that is fun enough, just not having the I need to have this much by this date, but it also is fun and I can't believe you're almost at your goal. That's amazing. It's a big number.
Yeah, I'm excited. Again, I have to really work hard to not jump into like, oh, well, it should be higher. Because I am very like I just want high, I'm a high achieving, like I want to have high achievements. And I really always have been like this. And so when I don't, I definitely like get really down on myself. And I have to constantly remind myself, like, it's fine. Like you'll get to where you need to go. Just keep showing up and be consistent and celebrate your damn wins. So I always preach this to my students and my clients, like celebrate your wins. If that's, you go from one sale to getting a couple sales per week, like be happy about that because you're not going to be happy. You're never going to be happy if you're not happy with the small things. So I have to really remind myself, like, be happy that you've had like 100,000 downloads. That's fucking awesome.
It's so
You know?
amazing. Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
so easy to just be like, oh no, I should be more. And that's like the mindset stuff is so crazy. And with my first business, I was so mean to myself. I mean, I look back at what I did with that business. Brand new mom, had no idea what she was doing, starting an e-commerce store. And like, I literally grew it to hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales per year with no ads, no team, no support, nothing. And I look back at that and I'm like, okay, that's kind of like, that's badass, working part-time because I had a little baby who I was trying to figure out how to do that stuff too. I was never happy with anything. No matter what happened in that business, I was like, you should have had more. You should do better. Like you got featured on Buzzfeed. Okay, cool. But like, why aren't you featured in this plate? Like I was such a jerk to myself. And now I'm much more, just like gracious to myself. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause you're not like, if you don't stop and celebrate the small little victories, once you get to the bigger ones, you're gonna move on to the next thing and the next thing. And that is not a good way to live, no matter if it's a weight loss goal, or starting a skincare business or whatever it is that you want to do. Like you have to celebrate those small victories. So yeah.
Yeah. And otherwise it's never going to be good enough. Nothing that you do
Exactly.
is going to
Yeah.
matter because it's like that
Mhm.
is exactly like weight loss or like getting
Yep.
healthy because I've been there where I'm like I'm like, I get to a certain weight and I'm like, I'm not happy here. Like that I still got more work to do instead of just being happy. And that's one thing that I'm trying to do now, which is just, be kinder to myself. Like you said, be kinder to myself and just be happy with myself where I'm at. Like that mindset is work that takes a conscious effort. It's
Yep.
hard for us. We're so mean
Yes.
to each other. We're so mean to ourselves.
So
So
mean.
like being
So
aware
mean.
of that, like mean, whatever, I don't know how you said, what you called yourself,
It's
the
like the
person.
mean, it's like, I don't know what I said earlier, but it's like the mean girl. It's
Yeah.
like our inner mean girl it, and I think a lot of it is like that person tries to keep us super safe,
Hmm.
Oh no, you can't start a business. You can't do this. Like, oh, you can't go to the gym. Like people will make fun of you. I think it's just like that little voice that just tries to keep us this little small safe person. And like, we have to just punch that person in the face, basically. Like, F off.
Yeah.
Go
I,
to the gym.
yeah. It's so true. It's like first being aware that that is just a voice that you need to shut up, because I think a lot of people think like, I need that as motivation. I need that. I need to talk mean to myself and be hard on myself in order to see results for whatever it is. But really, that's the opposite of what we need, especially when we're going through something and trying to get to the next level. So I do have people who have their own business. And I think that your story is so inspiring. Like if there's a lot of moms that listen to this podcast and they're like, well, now I'm dropping my kids off and I have 6 hours. I think it would be like, maybe I'll do my own thing, or maybe I'll start my own product or start my own podcast. Like,
Mhm.
I want you to tell us, what advice would you have for somebody like that? And then I want you to share what you are doing now and tell us more about where people can find you.
Cool. I think like, with starting a business or starting your own thing, I think there has never been a better time in the history of everything that you can do that today. I mean, you can literally go sign up for a $50 course on podcasting or find it for free, browsing on YouTube or something. Go buy a mic and start a podcast talking about something that you are lit up about. And then that can lead into a ton of different things. So definitely, whether it's like a coaching business or doing a podcast or a YouTube channel or selling a physical product, like what are you interested in? What could you teach people on? What do you get lit up about talking about? Like, and I love your story. Like you've had the corporate job, you have your skincare brand, and you're like, you know what? I just love wellness. I wanted to start a podcast. Like, I think it can be in any order for people. Like there is no right or wrong order. For me, I did like product business, coaching and educational business, podcast, and then all the other crap that I do. There's no right or wrong order, but I do think if you're wanting to get started with something, starting a podcast or starting a YouTube channel they're probably the easiest ways to start something, to start building an audience. If you're someone who loves doing video, then YouTube is your freaking jam. YouTube is the best. It's a search engine and people will just magically find you and watch your videos, and it's amazing. Podcasting is absolutely the most incredible thing. Like I am disgustingly obsessed with it. It's my favorite, by far my favorite thing in my whole business. If I could record podcast episodes every single day with people, I would be a much happier person, I think. So I need to figure out, one of my goals is podcast monetization. Like how do I make way more money with my own podcast? And then just with like a business, like what are you good at? What could you teach someone? Are you an expert at something? And I don't mean you have to be the biggest expert in the whole world, but it could be something like, how to make candy apples or something. How to make this specific facial mask that reduces wrinkles. And if you do that, please share that with me. It could just be, it could be literally anything. Like if you know how to do something more than the average person, or people frequently ask you questions all the time about one thing. Like I know, Jess, I ask you all the time about like skincare questions, or, hey, I found this brand, like, are these ingredients good for your skin? So like just kind of choosing a topic that you love. You can start a business, say you want to do you're like, I've heard about this drop shipping thing. I keep hearing drop shipping and I need to do a drop shipping business, which is essentially an e-commerce business where like a third party will ship out your product for you. And so you don't have to actually ship inventory. So it's a great business model in theory. So you could be like, you know what? I'm going to use one of my own examples. So I really love paddleboarding. So paddleboarding is something that I've discovered only like in the last year of my life, and I am obsessed with it. And I can't believe I've lived most of my life not doing it. So kayaking and paddleboarding are like my new jam. And the first time I went out on a kayak, I was like, all right, I need to take my phone out and take pictures because I saw seals. I live in Washington State, and pretty much any body of water that you go out on, you can see seals. And it's like the most magical thing. I'm obsessed with seals. And I was like, I can't, like, my phone was in my bag, and I was like, oh, I need to get my phone out. So I went and bought this like waterproof phone case that you like put around your neck and you put your phone in, and you can take videos and pictures with it inside. And I was sitting there one day and I was like, oh my God, maybe my next business is going to be selling these waterproof phone pouches, because it solves a problem for someone who is kayaking. And the best business advice I could ever give you is sell a product that's related to a hobby that someone has, because people will always pay money for their hobbies. So if you can pin that or connect that with a pain point that that person has, it's a winner. It's a winner product. And you don't have to do something that you're passionate about, but you're going to have a really hard time growing a physical product-based business if you don't like talking about it, because when stuff gets hard, you're not going to want to talk about it. And if you can't talk about your business all the time with enthusiasm, creating content, making videos, marketing, it's going to be a hard business to grow. So I always tell people, do something that you really like, passionate about and all that, but it has to be a product that people are wanting to buy, you know? So there's a lot of things you could do to figure that out. But my best advice is, if you want to do a product-based business, there's never been a better time. E-commerce is booming, and it will continue to boom. So if you do have an interest in e-commerce, selling a physical product, whether you're making it or manufacturing it, it could be, you know, making skincare stuff, which I think is more complicated. And it also could be literally ordering products from Alibaba online, which is a manufacturer overseas, and selling anything, whatever people are searching for online that is a pain point, you can sell it. So I feel like I rambled a little bit about that, but I think, yeah, there's really never been a better time. And, you know, starting your own business. And I want to say one more thing, because I started a business and then I sold it. So I exited my business successfully, and someone paid me for my business. When I started that business, I didn't intend to sell it. Now, on the flip side, any product-based business that I would, if I ever do another one, I would only do it knowing I was going to sell it. So I'm going to treat my business differently. It's not a hobby. This is a money-making, a profit-making thing. It's not a hobby. So I want to make that point, because a lot of people who start businesses, they start it in the basis of, it's my little hobby. It's my little side business. And I want to really remind you to not say, this is my little business, because you treat it like a little business. It's not a hobby. It's a business. Treat it like a business. And I think if you can have the mindset of, I could actually start something, grow it, make profit, and then someone would buy it from me for a couple times your yearly profit. Like, that's how, I'm blanking on the word I'm thinking of. Like, how awesome is that? You know, how liberating is that idea that you could start something and then someone would pay you for it? So dream big, start the business, test the waters. But I do think e-commerce it's totally booming. I mean, the growth of people buying stuff online, not just from Amazon, from everywhere, it's booming, and it will continue to grow. So I think there's never been a better time for someone to start that business.
I love all your words of wisdom for us. You're such an expert in this field. So thank you so much. And tell everybody and you're very multi-passionate. Like, you've done so many things. You forgot to mention that you are an author of a children's book. So, which I have. So I'll link that in my show notes too, because that
Thank
is
you.
a great book. And I was actually on Kerrie's podcast too. So I'll link that as well, so you can check out her podcast. That was my first podcast interview that I'd ever done.
Okay.
And I was so nervous. I remember I was so nervous to be on a podcast, and now I have my own, which is like so
Isn't
fun.
that amazing? It's amazing.
I feel like you when it comes to this, very obsessed with doing it, so excited, so energized about it. It is so
Mhm.
much fun. I
Yeah.
just feel like it just was easy. It was easy for me, like just to
Mhm.
start it and get going um and very enjoyable, which I love. So we'll tell everybody where we can find you.
You can find me at Instagram is a good spot, Kerrie.a.Fitzgerald, and that's Kerrie. And my website is first name, last name.com. So KerrieFitzgerald.com. And my podcast is called the Six Figure Product Business Podcast. So if you do want to start a product based business, you can definitely check out some of my episodes. And yeah, I think that's the best place. But yeah, I love seeing your growth of starting a podcast. It really is the best thing ever. And I think the sweet spot is that when you find something like this that you get lit up about, like you said, you get energized from it. It's not a draining activity. And I think that's like the sweet spot. Cause not ever, like I have a YouTube channel too, and it's painful for me to do the videos. Like I am not consistent. It's like my podcast versus YouTube is like a night and day. Like I'm obsessed with doing a podcast. I'm not obsessed with the making of YouTube videos. I am obsessed with YouTube because the algorithm is unreal. It's I've never seen anything like it, but it doesn't light me up like the podcasting does. So, but yeah, I'm so glad that you tried it.
Yeah,
Not tried it. I'm so
I'm lo- I'm
ventured
loving
into
it.
it. Sorry.
No, yeah, I'm loving it. And I'm so happy that you came on and shared all of your wisdom with us today. I'm so happy to have you. And I will link all of this, all of your information for everyone. So go check out Kerrie. And thanks for being here, Kerrie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So fun.